Bantamweight title on the line between the Bantamweight champ, Julianna Pena, the Venezuelan Vixen. She's taking on the Lioness, Amanda Nunes. You're and still featherweight champ if there's UFC featherweights that exist. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. As always, one half of your hosting duo, Craig Allen, Twitter and Instagram at Craig Allen FNP. With me to my left, to your right, as always, Matt Allen, respective socials at Matt Allen FNP. Now, this is a rematch like we have in the co-main event. Brandon Moreno taking on Kai Kara-France. First fight, Brandon Moreno wins. Somewhat of a controversial decision, but a very fun fight. It should be a great fight. In this main event, Amanda Nunes, greatest women's fighter of all time.
Easily.
Right up there on the Mount Rushmore of women's MMA with like Chris Cyborg and Ronda Rousey and name your other one, Holly Holm, Miesha Tate, whoever you want to pick. Taking on Julianna Pena, somebody that nobody gave a shot to. It's beating
I certainly did.
Amanda Nunes. I didn't either. There are limited amounts of people that thought that she had a chance, but what she did was she just withstood the punishment, and once Amanda Nunes really started to kind of teeter off and give up the striking defense and the rest of it, when the wheels fell off, Julianna Pena was there to finish the fight. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, trains out of Valley Flow Striking, and she's also from the Pacific Northwest originally. Now, for Julianna Pena, things have blown up since she's become the champion, and I'm the king of prop comedy. I'm like the Carrot Top of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada.
I would never declare myself king of anything. I can't believe you just said that.
But I have a reason for this one. So, UFC in 2021, greatest women's fighter of all time. They come out with Panini Prism cards, and if you can see this, I'm going to put it right there. You can see the fighters on the cover. So you have Khabib Nurmagomedov, Jorge Masvidal, Amanda Nunes, and John Jones. Well, one's retired, one's in some hot water, one's only one of the two.
And the other one lives in hot water.
Yeah. John Jones only lives in hot tubs. Now, on the cover of the new Donruss cards, Kamaru Usman, Julianna Pena, Khamzat Chimaev, and Jorge Masvidal. So, hot water man's still there. But the point I have to make is Amanda Nunes, not featured in as many promo materials as she once was. And Julianna Pena, it's not just an example from a box of cards in one fight that she won about 6 months ago. She has gone leaps and bounds into stardom as a UFC bantamweight champ, and I just wanted to start it off there.
And it's been really nice to see, because there's a lot of fighters in these not as publicized weight classes who, they get the belt, and nothing really changes with them. So it has been really nice to see Julianna Pena take full advantage of the opportunity that she's been given. And good on her. She speaks incredibly well for a UFC champion. She is very marketable with her own personality, because Julianna Pena is just like any one of us. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing that really separates her from the average person. That's what makes her really cool. She's a mom, too. So that's all really cool from Julianna Pena. This is my big issue with this fight. We saw Amanda Nunes basically give up. And I'm going to say basically because I'm not in her mind, so I don't know exactly what her thought process was. But I always go back to when Volkanovski fought Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega is the greatest jiu-jitsu ace we've ever seen in the smaller weight classes. And he put in two of his best submissions against the world champion. What did Alexander Volkanovski do? He let his body go pale and his head go purple and didn't give up. The second Amanda Nunes started to bend, she broke in their last matchup against Julianna Pena. And it's really interesting to think about the motivation of fighters, and this is very much a boxing mindset to bring over to MMA. But you guys know I'm a big boxing fan too. In boxing, we see it a lot, where someone will lose a high-profile fight and immediately fire everybody and change coaches, and they're never the same afterwards. Where's Amanda Nunes train now, Craig?
I put the Lioness studio, but it's her own gym.
Exactly. It's no longer American Top Team, a gym known for having killers all over in every weight class of every gender.
American Top Team coaches, though, that are there.
I know. I'm just saying the quality of training partner is not going to be what it once was.
She's bringing in people to match her skills.
I'm sure she has been able to, but again, I never like it when someone makes a panic change at 32 years old, because 34, sorry, again, she was a fighter who had the recipe. She was the greatest ever, and then she suffered a bad loss, and now it's time to make all these changes. It just feels like it's very spur of the moment from Amanda Nunes, and we have seen this happen to many combat sports athletes before. Deontay Wilder's my favorite boxer of all time. What did Wilder do after his second fight against Tyson Fury? Fired everybody and got a new training camp. Now, to be fair, he looked pretty good in the trilogy before he got stopped, but still, I just don't like it when you see an all-time great make these massive changes to their camp based off one loss. If it was like, hey, Amanda Nunes has been sort of weaning off American Top Team, she's always been thinking about this, it'd be one thing, but it does feel all very sudden to her, and I'm just very curious to see if it is going to give a new version of her, or if we're just going to see a similar Amanda Nunes who might be a little bit more focused.
What happened to Jan Blachowicz after he lost to Glover Teixeira?
I mean, he's looked okay.
But he won a fight, correct?
He did, yeah.
Yeah, and
well, based off an injury, though.
Charles Oliveira was of the camp of quitter, and now he's one of the greatest lightweights of all time.
No, but these people were not champions to begin with. Like, Charles Oliveira was a middle-of-the-road lightweight who nobody cared about before he then got focused. Jan Blachowicz beat a guy by injury his last time out, so I don't know if those examples are great.
He still looked fine in the cage, though, and he didn't lose.
Okay, but that's not telling the full story if you just say it like that, that's all.
I don't really like the argument. So, around Nunes, though, she has left American Top Team. That is a big topic of conversation. Now, again, there are UFC and ATT adjacent folks training with her. Obviously, it was a point that I had to make before Garrett Armfield came in on days' notice to fight David Onama. You had Armfield over there training with the Lioness. But you look at it for Julianna Pena on the counter, still at Valley Flow striking system, so you do like to see that out of her, the consistency. Obviously, the Ultimate Fighter. It's weird when the coaches fight before the season's over, but you do have the season finishing after, so Thiago Santos got a big-time main event coming up, and under that, you have the Ultimate Fighter, so...
And I haven't watched a single Ultimate Fighter fight yet, I gotta be honest. I do not care about Tough at all at this point.
But we will, so get ready for that. But when it does come down to this one, obviously the knock on both of these fighters, Amanda Nunes, nobody was on that level. And then finally Julianna Pena offered up a lot of resistance, and Nunes wasn't able to get over the hump. And for Julianna Pena, the opposite is true, because Build is a great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Build is a great grappler. Got one arm submitted by Jermaine Durandamy, kickboxer.
And got submitted by Valentina off her back.
Like, it's just wishy-washy. And obviously for Pena, the layoffs, that has been a big topic of conversation as well. But again, the nice 2-fight win streak, kind of weird when you beat Sarah McMahon to get your title shot, you know, in the not-so-distant past. But yeah, it's just, it is an oddball rematch, and it's an odd spot that we're in, because Julianna Pena, if we want to call her the Buster Douglas to the Mike Tyson, it's just, it is such a shock champion in this circumstance.
This is the thing about Amanda Nunes, though. Leading up to the Ronda Rousey fight, nobody cared about Amanda Nunes because they only promoted Ronda Rousey throughout that whole time. They thought, hey, our Golden Goose is going to win, so let's not worry about anybody else. That really backfired on them. But what was the story about Ronda Rousey after she lost to Holly Holm? Is that she doesn't have the motivation she once does. She made a lot more money in MMA. She made a lot of money outside MMA. She's probably not the same person that she once was. Amanda Nunes hasn't had the same level of success outside of the UFC that a Ronda Rousey does, but you can follow a very similar career path to how Amanda Nunes lost her title the last time out. This is a big hot take when I made it, but like, one of the biggest underdogs I've ever predicted was that Amanda Nunes was going to wash Chris Cyborg. I said that before that fight happened. I said Chris Cyborg has beaten a bunch of women she's supposed to beat her whole entire career, and this is the first woman who actually poses a serious threat to her in a number of years. And what happened? Amanda Nunes went out there, made the fight hard early, and Chris Cyborg was not really ready for that because she hadn't been in a fight like that for a very long time. I think Amanda Nunes found herself in the exact same position that two of her own biggest wins were. She had gotten a lot more famous since the first fight, since she had become a champion. She's enjoyed a lot of the success of MMA, and I just don't think she is the motivated champion that she once was. When you're in the back of the race, you're constantly looking at the person who's in first, trying to catch up to them, looking for something new to accomplish. Amanda Nunes has led the race for years and years and years and years, and if you're not looking behind you because nobody's that close to you, then you're never worried about anybody catching up. And I think at this point, it's not that Julianna Pena's skill set is some great counter to Amanda Nunes, but she's got good wrestling. That's the only thing that Amanda Nunes isn't top tier in, because we all know how good her jiu-jitsu is. We all know how good her boxing is. Like, those things are undeniable. She is arguably the best in the division at both of those. But her cardio, I would say, is slightly suspect. Again, people like to bring up the Katz and Gano fight. It was a very, very long time ago, so I have to say that. But her one weakness against Julianna Pena that definitely showed was her cardio, and I think that's where that submission loss really came down to. It was how dedicated was Amanda Nunes to that fight. Did she almost buy into her own hype? Like, I think there's a world where Amanda Nunes looks 30-40% better in this fight because it was, okay, I had the bad loss. Maybe that was the reset that she needed to really get back on track.
And it really is tough. I mean, at 34, are we at the end? Are we getting close? Like, where exactly are we? We throw it on over to the YouTube community tab. 2,000 votes, 63% with Nunes and 37% with Julianna Pena. We have a look at some of the comments. Chad, the UFC dad, Julianna gets it done with a strong jab, cardio. Mental edge ain't going to be easy, but she ready. Northwest stand up. Tommy saying, Julianna shocks the world again. Hashtag and still. We've got Carnage 29. As long as Nunes respects Pena, she's got this. And one more, we spamming saying if Nunes loses to her again, then I'm throwing out my TV out the window this time. So yeah, I'd say probably not along. Mine's attached to the wall, but if we got it down somehow, I don't get that involved. But we look at the odds in this one. Nunes open minus 250, minus 287. We have a look at Pena, plus 210 to plus 229. So Nunes is gained on the line. Obviously, the gym switch, this and that. When I break this one down to X's and O's, Nunes had a good first round against Pena.
She did.
And
fell off a cliff.
Stop respecting the striking of Julianna Pena. She was like smiling in those striking exchanges to where she kept getting hit with the jab and the right hand. And then eventually, once it hit the mat, that was all she wrote and it was over. And we're in this state of shock, like when Maria Agapova lost to Shanna Dobson. Like, big time shock. Like, I'm thinking Matt Serra beating GSP, making him tap the strikes. Now, GSP came back and won the next fight. So it is what it is.
GSP was like 24, though.
But when I look at this fight, for Pena, peaked at 32, almost 33. Amanda Nunes just turned 34 a couple of months ago. You sound like you've leaned one way.
This is my problem. Julianna Pena winning the title was very similar to when the Warriors won the title, but also had the worst loss in playoff history to the Memphis Grizzlies when they didn't have John Morant. It's like, wait, you got submitted by a pure striker who can't grapple to save her life. But then you also out-grapple like one of the greatest fighters I've ever seen. Like, nothing about this fight makes sense whatsoever. But again, I'm sticking with everything I said about Amanda Nunes earlier on in the video. I know I saw a lot of head shaking to my right, but I do worry about where her motivation is at this stage of her career. I think there's a world where she looks a lot better. I think there's a world where she looks a lot worse, too. Because, again, once people figure out your weaknesses in MMA, they go back to that well over and over and over again. Think about Anthony Pettis. Anthony Pettis was unbeatable. Clay Guida beat him, but other than that, he was pretty much unbeatable. And then Rafael dos Anjos fought him, and everybody looked at that fight and said, hey, I can throw straight shots down the middle and panic take down Anthony Pettis. Like, it's not that hard to do. And guess what? Everybody from that stage forward in his career has followed the exact same game plan against Anthony Pettis. Sometimes he's won, sometimes he's lost, but he's never been the Showtime that he once was after he got exposed. I think Amanda Nunes is going to win this fight, but this is what I will say. What? I said she's the more talented. I just don't know where her motivation is. That's really the key. I don't like a lot of the signs from Amanda Nunes, but she is still technically better in most areas of the fight. The thing about the smiling, though, is Amanda Nunes smiles in all of her fights no matter what. Like, she's beating the brakes off people. She always just has that facial expression. I wouldn't look too much into that, but I do think her cardio is going to be the big X factor. Listen, if Julianna Pena shoots for a lot of takedowns, maybe can't get them, but just doesn't eat a lot of damage to her head, those are all going to be winning exchanges for Julianna Pena, and I do expect that position to happen a lot in this fight. I don't think this is going to win fight of the night because, again, I think Pena is going to have to be very dedicated to her clinch control and her wrestling, but I think on the in-betweens, Nunes will be able to damage her enough to be able to edge on the judges' scorecards, but I'm going to look at this fight very similar to like a Shevchenko versus Talia Santos. I think by the end of it, it's going to be a really close and highly contested fight.
And it's going to be an interesting one, too. Obviously, for Julianna Pena, submission artists, submission losses. For Amanda Nunes, the early roadblocks on the way up through the UFC to the giant win streak. And if you look at this fight and you consider Amanda Nunes kind of like the Bare Naked Ladies song, I'm the kind of guy that laughs at a funeral. It just gets weird when she's smiling in the striking exchanges. You wonder, hey, are you wild? Like, are you crazy? And apparently she is. But when I do look at this fight overall, I look at the successes that not just Amanda Nunes has had against the Chris Cyborgs, the Megan Andersons, the Felicia Spencer's. I mean, fighters that she's supposed to beat. When I look at a fight against Julianna Pena,
she was a plus like 500 against Cyborg. She wasn't supposed to beat her.
Obviously, you look at Amanda Nunes in these fights that she has won, the successes that she's had, and in the Jermaine Durandamy fight, the point that people kind of, or the thing that people point to is, well, she wasn't as successful at the takedown. She spent a little bit of time off for
got lit up on the feet.
Jermaine Durandamy was able to have some success in the striking. When I look at a fight between Nunes and Pena, I'm still left with the same feeling of Amanda Nunes, if we rank them, Hall of Fame badge with the striking. When it comes to the wrestling defense, we're starting to get like bronze maybe. Like if we're thinking NBA 2K, like we're not the worst, we're not the best, but you can definitely see Pena exploiting that once more. But to get there, she had to utilize her striking to beat Nunes, and I don't see that happening the second time around.
I do think she's the steady... Again, fatigue makes cowards out of everybody. It's the truth. Like, I don't care how skilled you are. If you get tired, none of your skills matter. So again, the big X factor is, if Nunes looks like prime Nunes, I don't think this fight's very competitive. We just don't know if Nunes is still in her prime at this point. Like, she got started in her MMA very early, which normally means your prime ends very early too. So I'm very curious to see what version of Nunes we do get this weekend, because I think there's a world where she looks 30% better than their first fight. I think there's a world where she looks 30% worse than their first fight, but I'm still going to pick her.
I think we're going to get a late-stage Jose Ronaldo performance out of Amanda Nunes, and we're going to get a return to greatness taking on Julianna Pena. But again, listen, one used to be on the Wheaties box, the UFC Prism. She's no longer there, and Julianna Pena is that poster child. So big opportunity for both these women in the rematch for the bantamweight strap. 2 title fights, don't forget that. Brandon Moreno taking on Kai Kara France in their rematch, interim flyweight gold. You got a card littered with good fights. Question mark kicks 2 hours before the prelims. The Ultimate Fighter 30 finale coming up in a few weeks, and then you also have the sidekick during this main card for the pay-per-view. We're live here on YouTube, and if you missed it, Dana White's Contender Series. You folks subscribed, you supported the channel, and all thanks to you, we're throwing those videos out there Mondays. You can check them out. It should be a lot of fun with the season kicking off this week, and if you're watching this fight after Tuesday, forget about it. We'll be back for next week. So a lot of great fights. Hopefully everybody enjoys it and has a good week.
Yeah, it should be a great pay-per-view. I know I'm really excited for it, and hopefully you guys are too.
Should be a lot of fun. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, and as we always say,
Let's get into it.